Well, human rights groups are raising the alarm after the European Commission invited Taliban officials to Brussels to discuss migrant deportations. The meeting, which could happen this month, hasn't been officially confirmed, but it comes at the request of EU member states who are pushing for faster returns of Afghan asylum seekers who've been rejected. More than 80 groups are asking the European Commission to reverse course, saying that the move risks normalizing a regime that has banned girls from school and barred women from much of public life. Jenny Shin has the details.
An invitation to Brussels by the EU for the Taliban for talks on deportations of asylum seekers. It's the first of its kind, and civil society organizations and human rights groups say it crosses a red line. For them, it sends a dangerous message that Afghan women can be abandoned to meet the EU's political ends.
The Taliban do not represent the people of Afghanistan as they lack domestic democratic legitimacy. Any official engagement with Taliban representatives, particularly on European soil, carries significant legal, political, and symbolic implications. It risks being perceived as a form of normalization or implicit recognition.
Brussels faces growing pressure from European governments to send back rejected asylum seekers and Afghans convicted of crimes. The bloc does not formally recognize the Taliban regime, but without the cooperation from the Taliban authorities on travel documents and flights, deportations remain difficult to carry out. Critics say any diplomatic engagement is a slap in the face of Afghan women who are subjected to what the UN has called a gender apartheid in the country. Since the Taliban returned to power in 2021, women and girls have been banned from secondary and higher education, prohibited from becoming doctors, excluded from the job market, and even subjected to restriction of movement. A law introduced under the Taliban also allows men to enslave and punish women, subjecting them to undocumented abuse. Those opposing the EU's move say the bloc should explore other legal options that don't reduce human rights to bargaining chips.
And for more on this story, I'm joined by Fawzia Koofi. She is the former vice president of the Afghan National Assembly and a human rights advocate. She also survived 2 assassination attempts, the most recent in 2020. Thanks so much for being with us here on France 24. More than 80 groups are urging the EU not to host these Taliban officials in Brussels. Do you think the European Commission is making a mistake by even considering these talks?
I do think engagement with the Taliban have only emboldened them. If we look at the last 5 years, EU and other member states from the region have engaged with the Taliban, but it has not really changed anything. It has not changed the security. In fact, based on the UN different committees report, Taliban are still hosting, different violent extremist groups, including Al-Qaeda and the TTP, the Tariq Taliban Pakistan, and other groups from Central Asia. The group has continued to suppress the people, the citizens, not only women, but of course women mainly. You mentioned some of their suppressive policies in the report, but I would say that under the Taliban, gradually over time, over the last 5 years, women have basically been pushed to second-class citizens, and they have done it very smartly. They have done it as they have used women's rights as a bargaining chip, and they have done it over time. The more engagement they received from the international community, the more they suppressed women, and they basically stripped away all the rights from women. There is not even one example that I can give that is there to protect women. In fact, in the last 3 days that EU and European Commission is talking about the 20 interior ministers' request to engage with Taliban, as they call it, at the technical level. Taliban have arrested more than 70 women in one of the provinces in Western province under the pretext of what they call it inappropriate hijab. Now, I think it's not going to remain at the technical level. So I'm seriously worried, along with many, many people, not only the civil society activists or organizations, but everyone who live in that country. And I'm in contact with, they look at Europe, and they look up Europe as a continent that protect the voiceless and, pressurize, use the accountability mechanism instead of appeasement.
Now, the EU says these discussions will focus on migrant deportation. It does not amount to a formal recognition of the Taliban. Is that a distinction that holds up in practice, do you think?
I think, many countries that continue to engage with the Taliban, starting from the region. We know now some of the regional countries officially recognize Taliban, including Russia. Recently, Taliban signed the security deal with Russia, although they claim that it's only for, technical level to repair the previous machinery that is left from the USSR fight in Afghanistan, or their invasion of Afghanistan. But we know that it's not the case. We know that they have a very strong relationship with some countries in the region, including Russia, and we know that it started from that technical level. So we are worried because we have a lived experience of starting that technical level discussion, and on based my own experience of engaging with the Taliban, because I negotiated with the Taliban for 1 year. The United States negotiated with the Taliban, that resulted in signing that political agreement, as we know, the Doha deal. Taliban are good in making gaining from these negotiations without making any concessions. So because they don't have anything to lose. I mean, it's us, the people of Afghanistan, the women of Afghanistan, that we are losing every day. We're losing. Taliban have become from a military violent group to now a group that is ruling Afghanistan. So they're actually gaining. They don't have anything to lose. So we are losing, and that's why we are very, I think the Europe is sending a wrong signal to everybody that is using, power as a means of suppressing and dictating the people and trying to strip away people's right in any part of the world. We should not embolden them by sending that signal that, you suppress population and then you are giving that privilege to travel all the way to European soil. You know that thousands of women and men in Afghanistan who have served with security, who have been women rights activists, who have been politicians, if they go back to Afghanistan, they will be killed. They are in Iran and Pakistan waiting for visas to be settled in Europe or other countries until Afghanistan is safe for them to return. They don't get visa. Why should the Taliban get that? Some of these Taliban are even in the travel ban. So my urgent request is that the EU should stand with us, with democratic forces, with the opposition, with activists, with the people of Afghanistan. 90% of the people of Afghanistan do not support what Taliban doing. At least 18 million plus women don't support them.
Give our viewers just some idea of the reality of what's happening right now. Afghan women and girls face bans on education, severe restrictions on movement. If a woman is deported back to Afghanistan today, what is her reality?
Her reality is that not only she is banned from being a human being in terms of having the basic liberty to work, to study, to get out of her home, but also if she speaks up, she will be arbitrarily detained. In many occasions, there are reports that they are raped in the prison, and sometimes they disappear. And it's not even in the case of women. It also happened to men as well, especially people who have served with the previous government in the capacity of security forces, or even in the, not in security forces. If they come from a different language or different province other than the Taliban, they do that. Recently, just like a month ago, they arrested 3 of my family. They confiscated my house. They closed my office. They arrested 3 of my family, one of them student from university. They tortured them for 1 week. Arbitrarily, they detained them without any, trial, anything. Then they released them because they have a blood relationship with me. And they use that as a sign to silence, the activists who are actually advocating for women's rights. Not only, my case is just an example because I have access, but there are thousands of people who do not have access to media or to the TV stations or to the mainstream, media like yourself to raise this issue. So I think, and also it's going to have security implications because the more it's a political theory, the more you suppress people, the more you push them to make harder choices. Now there are all these groups, including ISIS, Al-Qaeda, TTP, other violent extremist groups who are actually using Afghanistan soils And if people are left with no choice, they might even join them because of suppressive policies of the Taliban. So in a way, it has a direct impact to the global security. And this is something we have been warning in 2001 when, before the 9/11 attack. We believe the Taliban should be held accountable for what they promised during the Doha negotiation. They said they are willing to respect women's rights, give women the chance to study until PhD, and this is on the record. Accept a political settlement where all the ethnic groups or the religious groups, all men and women could be part of that political settlement, but it didn't go that way. We need to hold them accountable for what they have promised, because an exclusionary politics, a politics of exclusion, is going to take Afghanistan back to what it was before 2001, and it's actually moving towards that direction.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Fawzia Koofi, she's a former vice president of the Afghan National Assembly and a human rights advocate. Thank you so much for joining us here on France 24.